and no local IT group, despite demands and contrary to law, was allowed to have a look at the source code. People asked, was it the same one used on election day? Well, we as NAMFREL, we believe that it was the same one. But you cannot prevent others from suspecting otherwise because it was never made public, or the interested parties were never allowed to have a look. Next, transparency and accountability again. Certification results were never made accessible to the public. In fact, CENPEG, this is a group of IT practitioners from the academe and as well as from the from industry. They requested for 21 documents from the Election Commission. The request was perfunctorily dismissed. They did not agree to the request. So, safeguards mandated by law were disabled or removed. Like I said, the UV lamp, which is supposed to detect the ballot, the fake ballot. The voter verifiability feature, which is in the law, was also disregarded. They said it will only entail more time if they improve that. So they disregarded it. Speed was their sole purpose. They were so focused on the machine, they forgot totally the voters. So digital signatures were removed, not to mention a number of last-minute arbitrary changes such as in the ballot design, which has confused the final testing 3 days before or 4 days before the election. So what should be done? I think prudence should have told the COMELEC to gradually introduce automation to first gain public confidence by all the stockholders. This was not pilot tested. All stages of the process must be made transparent and all aspects be independently verifiable. Transparency is the hallmark of a credible election. The composition of the COMELEC should be such that at least one of the 7 commissioners be IT capable. None of the 7 commissioners was IT capable, nor any of the higher rank officers. And as Eric has mentioned, they've been changing their timelines every day, issuing circulars by the day. They should start early to avoid constant revisions of their timelines and their calendar of activities. For instance, the rules governing settlement of disputes and protests were released 4 months after the elections. That shows you how ill-prepared the Election Commission is. The guidelines for the random manual audit were issued 4 days before the election. The last-minute change in the ballot resulted in errors in the final testing of the machine that was an embarrassment to both the COMELEC and the Election Commission and the technology provider. Hence, I think we should take into account the suggestions and the recommendations of the information technology community. I'll pass on to Telibert.
This is the final segue. I think we have come to a point where we reflect on a global perspective and see how much lessons can we offer relative to the experience that we just had. I guess, again, this is all depending on context. What kind of elections do you have? What kind of electoral system do you have in your country? And the main reason for the case for change to be established very well. In our case, it was because the counting took so long, and there were manipulations in the process that we had to consider automating the process. But in places like India, for example, or in places where you have parliamentary elections, you really don't get to vote as many voters as we need to vote here and over in my country because of the electoral system. Now, the cause for change is not just for voting and counting. It also has to go back to registration, even registration of political parties, and registration or recording of expenses and donations by political parties and candidates. And you have alluded to this earlier, Pat, that the true cost of modernizing has to be realized. In our case, it is not just a financial cost. Actually, it's change of behavior. And we still have to see what is the change in the behavior of the political contestants for the reason because they cannot, or there is no other any more window to manipulate in the counting and canvassing. And as mentioned earlier by my colleagues, there's also very clear visualization of what is the role of the electoral management body. In our case, there was a superseding role or a superior role which required them to be better administrators of outsourcing. And that was not the quality or that was not the skill set that they had possessed, and even a skill set that they had considered purchasing, if you will, or acquiring, so that they're able to look at the context of the elections rather than go into the technology under which the elections are being done. The next item is that ensuring that there is room for civil society participation. And this is not just civil society, it also is for professional organizations like IT community, the educators of the country, because I think what NAMFREL has actually done is to bring all these groups together and make this a national or a nationwide exercise or something of national interest, not just an interest of the participants and also to the Commission on Elections, that there always has to be that window and always has to be that facility wherein these people can contribute either by lending their expertise or, as what we always do oversight because it just makes the job better. Lastly, on the lessons, there is really a need for ample time for the rollout. Our recommendations, and we have discussed this like a day ago, about what should we do. We thought that the COMELEC or our election management body should be able to put forth recommendations as to what kind of system to use a year and a half before the election. That means before then, they had already secured inputs from civil society, from professional organizations, looked at the technology, made sure that whoever is going to participate in the purchase of the system has already certifications from international organizations. In other words, the significant pullback in terms of schedule will do us well. And related to this, I think the metrics will have to be set very carefully. For example, if we were to adopt this new system coming in 2013, I would like to offer that there has to be a clear metrics. If one of the metrics is understanding by 95% of the voters of the new system, then that's something that people should go for. The election management body should go for and set benchmarks from when it is executed to, let's say, a month before the election, that there is 95% thereabouts understanding by voters. On the global recommendations, because as you have information that you have provided us, there are a number of countries that are going to go use technology, and we think that perhaps NDI can play a big role in this one, is that we have to ensure that the market for election equipment remains competitive. There are two reasons why it should be kept competitive, so that there are options always for any country going into some sort of modernization, that they have always options for themselves. Number two, that the system or the standards are being moved up and up all the time, not so much in sync with technology, because elections doesn't quite break the technology barrier, but it just have to make sure that because of competition, there is that sort of movement. Finally, on the competitiveness, we would like to see vendors of election systems that publish their source codes on the web. And it should be those who don't do so, because it's contrary to credibility or measures of credible elections, should not be considered by these countries, simply because, as you have learned from us, verifying the source code is a lot of effort, a lot of things, and wastes a lot of time. For the network, for the global network for domestic election monitors, this is what we would like to offer. Because of this portal being set up now, we would like to be able to keep track of and exchange information as to which countries are doing what and how can they help each other. I mean, what we possess here is a different perspective, and it's an exclusive perspective of domestic election observers. Therefore, there is value in keeping this perspective and sharing this among our brothers and sisters.